Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fine. I'm here.
Yeah, yay. Welcome back. Welcome back. It was weird. I guess that joke last week. I felt like we've been through the crisis, and somehow I was like in a new role on Earth Prime. It was kind of weird being in the driver's seat, but I'm glad you're back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate everyone that we had our two amazing guest hosts on, so you had someone else to talk to if it wasn't going to be me, and we had to get two. I mean, just so that you had multiple.
Had multiple ideas, multiple thoughts, but Veronica and Tasha had lots of great things to say about the crossovers, and we're in a post-crisis world now.
Yeah, but are we? I don't know.
I guess it depends on the show. Maybe I should say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was, however, and this is what I've been waiting for. A lot of listeners know, leading up to the crisis, we were kind of at the point of, okay, get to it. What is going on? And now that we're here, it's been a very interesting week of TV.
It has been.
Because you know what to expect with these shows, but now that crisis is over, it's kind of like, okay, where are they going with this? And then slowly and surely, as each show ended up dropping and airing their post-crisis episode, we've got some reveals, we got some twists. Each one is using it in their own way. It makes me extremely curious about the Flash returning.
Yeah. I spoke a little bit about my theories on that last week as far as what they're going to adapt. I know they are definitely going to go the route that Supergirl did last season and Arrow's done as well, which is to have a second big bad follow the mid-season finale, and in this case the crossover event with Crisis. So that's good. They're not going to try to stretch out the big bad all season long, which, I mean, I think Bloodwork possibly could have worked, but even it was starting to show its limitations as far as a major baddie for a whole season as we led up to Crisis. So I'm glad that the new showrunner is definitely going in a two baddies approach this season.
Yeah. It makes the most sense in the world to do that, considering especially the emphasis that was placed on Barry Allen and his likely death in Crisis, which we all knew wouldn't happen,
right?
Except for him, apparently, and. So it just only makes sense that he had a villain leading up into that moment, and then the aftermath, there's something else brewing. But more on that later, because we do have a few news items to get to. As you texted me earlier, the Kenobi show that we have been in anticipation for Disney Plus has really been on hold.
yeah It's funny because like last week it was like major trend on Twitter one afternoon, and part of it even I think last Thursday, I believe, that Kenobi was being canceled, and everybody was just like, whoa, and there were some dubious sources of that story, and so most people just kind of laughed it off as like, well, of course, there's some people who believe, in the world of fake news, people fall for stuff hook, line, and sinker all the time now. But most of,
I don't know if it's the world of fake news, but I think a lot of us who are into these kind of shows have been scarred by the demon that is DCEU. and constantly telling us you're going to get this movie this year, and then oh, that never happens.
Well, there's that too. There is some legitimate things that have happened in the past where you hear things are in development and then they just get delayed. But this one was a straight up cancellation. And then of course, fast forward to today, this evening, as a matter of fact, I think Hollywood Reporter, Collider, and some others were definitely confirmed that the show is delayed due to Kathleen Kennedy having some concerns with the scripts that have been written and to date, and so they have postponed indefinitely. I think according to Collider, I think the production teams and stuff were sent home for a while until they get everything figured out. I think the Hollywood Reporter reported that the show was going from 6 episodes down to 4, so it's a developing situation. But I think, given that it has been now reported by the trades and others that the show is delayed, we can take it to the bank. And I guess bigger picture, this is sort of becoming a recurring theme in the Star Wars universe. The studio and the honcho over Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy, having issues with creative decisions made by the creative staff. Right.
I don't know. I just, at this point with Kathleen Kennedy, a lot of us knew she was never in it for her own love of Star Wars. I mean, I never got that impression. It's a job, and she's doing it the way she knows how to. I'll say it like that. I do believe that. Hey, despite what you think about the most recent trilogy, it made money. It made money.
All three.
Yeah, all 3 of them. Han Solo failed. Rogue One did surprisingly well. Surprisingly well. So, and I think a lot of the criticism is because, well, some of the movies, we just are a bunch of completists, so we need to watch everything we want. But also, when the movies fail, it's partly script issues. So, because I'm not viewing the scripts, I can't say, oh, she's so stupid for doing that, or no, she's exactly right. And that's the hard thing. Yeah. Because you want to paint her, people want to paint her as a villain because of the past trilogy and how divisive they've been. But at the same time, she's had a lot of success.
Oh yeah, I mean, what, 3? Okay, so when you think about it, she's been at the helm now of 5 feature films. 3 of them made over $1 billion. 2 of them, for any other universe, would be a smashing success.
Right.
Financially, she hasn't lost any money. We're not looking at a Doolittle situation here. So
right, so, or in the DCEU situation.
And that narrative, even with the DCEU, really is only applying to the Flash now, because overall they've did a course correction and have had billion-dollar films as well. So I think you have a good point about the scripts. Everybody's just pointing fingers and freaking out. Everything, we really don't know. And of course, I guess, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, we had the supposed original script from what would have been The Last Skywalker released, and many people, myself included, would have been like, this really probably would have been a better film. But we don't have that going with Kenobi right now. So
no, we don't, because Reylo is canon. Please, everyone, just calm down. Okay. All right.
Don't let me go jump on you. Just kidding.
Let me have it. All right.
I'll let you have it. But yeah. But at the end of the day, I think maybe she is taking a little pause, especially given how successful Mandalorian was, with even after Netflix cooked the books on the their viewership numbers. But it still was it still is a very hot property, and everybody's loving Baby Yoda. And so, I mean, she has had a track record of success. So, yes, they've had their issues with creative teams and directors going on having to split over due to creative issues. But like you said at the very beginning, Sarah, she's in this to make a profit, and she's looking at this from a business standpoint. And if what she was seeing from a business standpoint just wasn't getting a good feeling for it, then it's better to delay it than rush something out there and it be shit.
Right. Because 3 years from now, after it drops and everything happens, and we say, wow, those were really strong episodes, better than Mandalorian, then, I mean, who's going to even remember that this was a thing? That's another thing. If it's a success, she's queen. If it's a failure, then it's, well, you shouldn't have delayed. It's whatever.
Yeah,
and we spent way too much time on this really insignificant story. In other news, Captain Marvel 2 has begun development. We all knew it was going to get a sequel. It made over $1 billion, despite what you think. Interesting, though. New directors.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Russo brothers didn't direct the first Captain America film.
They didn't.
So there is something to be said for how Marvel does this, where you get a shot, but if it's not a good fit for the progression, then you're not guaranteed all 3 films, or how many with the character they intend to produce. Or like Wakiti. Yeah. Well, he came on in the 3rd one, knocked it out of the park, and now he gets the 4th one. So I like this. I am very curious of who they are going to decide to direct it.
Yeah.
And I do remember I liked Captain Marvel probably more than other people did. At the same time, there were parts where I don't necessarily blame the writing. I blamed more of the directing, where it just didn't work. It didn't have that extra, this is a character who, like, this, it didn't pack that Wonder Woman emotional gut punch.
Right.
Also didn't have Chris Pine's blue eyes, and I understand that.
Well, it's interesting with this project too, is that they're bringing in, her name is Megan McDonnell. She is one of the, originally started out as a scriptwriter for the new WandaVision show, which of course is getting moved up because they feel that it's really ready to go, and it seems that they think it's going to have a very positive response. And so she's been brought in to write the script for this sequel to Captain Marvel,
which, you know, makes me infinitely more excited for WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
And I did traveling over Christmas break, and I watched both Infinity War and Endgame back to back. And I have to say, what they do with Wanda and Vision in those movies, it just takes them to a whole new level. So I'm already prepped for WandaVision, and I'm getting excited for it, and arguably even a little bit more than Falcon and Winter Soldier. I don't know why.
I feel that way too, and I don't know if it's because we got some of the still photos out this week from Falcon and Winter Soldier or what, but yeah, I'm at that place too where I am getting excited for WandaVision, and also I think given from what we've heard about it, it just seems very different, and like you said, the pairings that they had and the way they developed that relationship in the films. I went from not really kind of mad about those characters to really engaged with them as far as some of the secondary characters in the MCU films.
Right. Yeah, I think they should just air Infinity War on loop for 24 hours prior to them dropping WandaVision, because Wanda is the heart and soul, almost arguably, of Infinity War. Like, that moment when she actually has to kill Vision, sorry, spoilers, and it, and they like play it out, and it's all slow motion, and she thinks she won, and even then, it's bittersweet. Like it's a tragedy, and yet, and then in an instant, Thanos takes it all away, and it's just like it's totally preparing her to have that mental breakdown, which I suspect is what's going to happen with Wanda. And then we're going to get those promised tie-ins to the Doctor Strange 2 movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yeah, I'm fully prepared for having a great continued Marvel year or marvelous decade.
Yeah, the second decade of the MCU is going to be just as exciting as the first.
Yeah, and it's just it's great, you know. Maybe the year kicked off slowly, but it's starting to gain some momentum, you know, as Crisis is over, shows start coming back from break. We get news about Marvel movies that makes us excited. Yeah, it's gaining momentum.
It is.
So, in other news, oddly enough, there was an interview that dropped. And it's really interesting how anytime Stephen Amell is on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, it makes headlines.
Yeah, it does.
And we end up talking about it because I don't know what Michael Rosenbaum does in that room, but for some reason, you get the most raw version of Stephen Amell in both interviews. I listened to both back to back, by the way.
Okay. Oh, so you listened to the original one that he did last year?
Before I even listened to the new one, because I really wanted, because I knew what was going to happen in the second one, and I really wanted to hear the difference, you know.
Right.
And you do, like, he is so much more calm in that original interview, and right off the bat there is an anger and aggression, but more importantly, listening to that second episode just proves how right we are. So he was totally out of it for the second half of season 7. He hated it, and we knew it because his acting went so downhill.
Yeah.
It was astonishing.
Yeah, but he rebounded in season 8 because they gave him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Well, even then he came back. But you heard it. Like, he knew he wasn't there for the right reasons. He wasn't really giving it his all. And then you hear about some of the logistics, and there was real anger when he said, during my death scene, they were trying to wrap 2 other actors so that when they shot my side, I couldn't. There wasn't nearly as there wouldn't be as good of a connection, a good of emotional punch. And it makes me think, yeah, that's why it felt so awkward, that whole scene.
Yeah.
Because Katie and Grant weren't there.
Right. And this is obviously everybody, what Stephen was talking about was the first death, not the, or was it the second death?
I thought it was the second death.
Yeah, it was the second death. That's right. Because they were they both had to go do their shows, and they were getting up on their working hour break, and so it was so revealing, an interview. And you're right about the anger, because if you haven't listened to this interview, strongly recommend that you do, and do, as I was about to say, and do what Sarah did, because I did not, but just hearing the second interview, which actually is really almost a two-parter, because the first 30 minutes of it, he does this podcast with Michael Rosenbaum, who folks will probably remember from Lexus from Smallville and other things. That anger was there. He had just wrapped the show. He was back in LA. And he was just, you could just tell in his voice, everything. He was just emotionally just wrung out. And I mean, and even they were getting into it. It was very deep too, because they were building up to this moment where everybody, well, you've probably seen the clickbait headlines about the panic attack, and he did. I mean, it was building up to that, and it was just very raw Stephen.
I love that moment when they're talking and the next thing you hear is, am I sweating?
Am I sweating? Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's purely an innocent question, and then it escalates, and then they start to slowly fade out because clearly both him and Michael have gotten up and walked away from the microphones because they're concerned.
Yeah.
And that is so, there's something so pure about that moment, and it just, I like it. I deal with anxiety. I've never necessarily had a panic attack like that, but I've also, especially lately, I found myself constantly taking a lot of deep breaths and just reminding myself everything's going to be fine, because in this world these days, there's even more noise, and I'm just going to call it as noise than ever. There's a lot of stress. No one likes to be an adult anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever did, but there's a lot, and it just, I liked it, and then I liked the pause, the intermission, if you will, and then you get the aftermath, and it was great. It was a really cool. It talks a lot about psychology and just how we work ourselves to these points.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it to an extent.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, when I was listening to that interview, and it was almost, I feel like not only was it therapeutic for Stephen and Michael, but it was also for me as a listener, because like you were saying, I've dealt with anxiety personally, professionally. I mean, there's just been a lot of things that's happened over, in both my lives over the last few years. And I was just, I was telling someone about, you should really listen to this podcast, because I mean, it for me, I look back and I had those moments too, where it's just like, I was like Stephen.
Yeah.
and I had my breaking point, and I thought about those moments, and then how he was able to, like, Michael gave him the choice. He's like, look, we could just bag that and just not do it, or we can proceed. And it was, he decided to, like, oh, let's you can air it, and I do want to come back and finish this interview with you. And when he does come back, and he's had a few weeks off, and I think it was just a couple weeks ago when he recorded the second part of the interview, you could tell the difference. And again, it was just really, for me as a listener, and it was just a real honesty about Stephen Amell that you just don't get from a lot of these staged interviews that you have, whenever they're doing a little junket promoting a show or whatever. And it was just really refreshing that he and really spoke a lot about him as an individual, to be willing to be that open and vulnerable. Yeah.
And it goes back to something that was brought up during the first half of the interview, where he was explaining how frustrated he is, not just with the show, but with the fact that there's a lot of rumors about who he is. And he, from his perspective, he has done nothing to incite those and trigger those that perception, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
And it just goes against him. And I sympathize with that, but there's also a little bit of me who says, well, you signed up for it, because celebrities get criticized every day. There's so much speculation about who they are, because we all want to know. I mean, someone like Stephen Amell, for the last 6-7 years, once a week, I'm watching him on screen. I feel like I know him.
Yeah.
And so you're vulnerable to that, but at the same time, as someone who views it's his job, and then you just perceive it as more criticism about how he's doing his job, especially because all the rumors are about how he is on set.
Right.
So it's really interesting, and I don't know if they're true or false. I don't know about that because I'm not there, and I don't even hear what the actual rumors are. But at the same time, when you listen to that interview and everything that he puts out there, it really does make you double think, well, those rumors can't be true, right? Like, really?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it again. I can't. If you're a fan of Arrow, fan of Stephen Amell, or even have a passing interest in him as an individual, I strongly recommend going to go listen to. The show's called Inside of You, and um, yeah, I mean, Michael definitely gets inside of Stephen.
Yeah, before you were saying it was therapy, I think it's also therapeutic for anyone who has watched or been a viewer of any Arrowverse show, because there is such an insight you gain into that production,
Oh yeah.
whether it's Arrow, Flash, Legends, Supergirl, even in both of the interviews, there's something to be said with how honest they are about that cycle. And also, this is not just Arrowverse. Arguably, it's CW and the way they produce their shows, because Michael relates to a lot of what Steven says,
Yeah.
particularly because he was on Smallville, same studio. So there, just as a viewer of TV and people who are curious to really get inside and behind that curtain and understand the production, I think you can garner a lot of insights to just what they do in Canada all the time and how brutal it is on someone's mental state and their physical state and their relationships with their family.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and why these actors really do, when they have their breaks, you're not seeing them in other projects because they just need that time to recharge.
Right. It's 23 episodes is no joke.
Yeah.
No joke. It is not a walk in the park. It is practically a production for maybe 3/4 of Infinity War.
Yeah.
I don't know. But man, it was, I do apologize for not being here last week to talk Crisis. However, silver lining for me, Crisis is arguably the worst crossover that they've ever done.
You're not alone here. You're not alone there. You're not alone there.
The last 2 hours that we waited, Will, weeks to see, was so bad. It was like, yes, Ezra Miller's cameo, amazing, brilliant. CW finally figured out how to keep a secret. However, everything else that happened was ridiculous. I could not believe. And then listening to Steven's interview, I was like, yeah, I would be pissed off and on the brink of a breakdown too. Because literally the character who started it all is going to die in this thing. And it's not an emotional gut punch. It is just, I could not get over it. And I did have a legitimate reason not to be here last week, but I really was not in a place where I could talk about it coherently.
No worries.
Much less not just cursing and saying, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is just garbage, guys. This is really bad and shouldn't. No. Maybe because we were spoiled by the last 2 crossovers.
Yeah.
It felt really sloppy. Really sloppy.
Yeah. I don't think it was the worst crossover for me, at least. But yeah, it wasn't. I mean, EarthX to me is still the gold standard as far as their crossover events.
Oh, really? I do Elseworlds. I really liked Elseworlds.
Elseworlds was number 2. Invasion 3. And I guess Invasion and Crisis rank about are tied for me.
and you know what? I'll put even the original crossover between Arrow and Flash.
Mm-hmm.
They're yeah, at the time and in comparison to the others that have now aired, very minor, very small, but still important for how this whole thing evolves, right?
Yeah, right.
And really sets a tone, sets a pace. And even the aliens, I mean, you add another show or another two shows, and there's momentum there. And it just I don't remember. Well, maybe I get angry at these shows all the time, but I just could not believe how there was all this buildup for Barry being in the Speed Force and using the Speed Force to save the day. And that third hour, all I saw was a bunch of people who land in these different places throughout Arrow history.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 seconds later, they're all picked up. And I'm like, wait a second. Really?
Yeah.
And it just felt so wrong.
Yeah. See, as far as the final 2 hours, I like the fourth hour. I felt, and I said this before, and I'll stand by it. I still think that fourth hour, for me at least, was, and maybe it was the Ezra Miller, but it stands out for me as some the my favorite hours of Arrowverse television. And so I totally can get where you were completely let down. And yes, the death scene could have been.
He wasn't in the fourth hour. He was in the third hour.
No, he was in the fourth hour. John Wesley Shipp was in the third hour. Earth 90 Barry was the third hour.
See, and this is why it's a bad crossover. You didn't get the hours correct.
You were just, I think, yeah. Maybe watch it again whenever you've had some space from it.
Because there was 5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot one of the hours.
Yeah, that's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
So go back in time.
Yeah.
When I said third, I meant fourth. Anyways, no, I just wanted to get that off my chest, that I really was kind of
you're underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think you're not alone in that feeling. And as you know, and we just, as we discussed this evening, no, it wasn't the best of the crossover events. It was definitely the most ambitious one, but yeah, it definitely had his problems, and it also had its high points as well.
Did it? No. I mean, that fifth hour, please, you just delete that from all of television, because really, post-Crisis and the true fifth hours is what we got this week across the Arrowverse shows. Now, we watched Supergirl this week.
Yes, we did.
Was so funny, because as soon as I started watching it, I went to send you a message that you had already sent me, where we both wanted to tell each other, you better check out Supergirl. And I'm so glad I did. This show is back.
It is.
I am on board. I'm not going to watch the other episodes because they're irrelevant in my mind at this point. We have Lex. We have team ups happening, and multiple brainies.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, it's funny. The only place I think we sent the same message to each other, and one thing that they should leave in 5A is this whole Lena Kara thing, and just, okay, she remembers she hates her, and let's keep on moving forward, because the Brainiac story, this was just, I love that this week for various reasons. One, just the multiple Brainies. Two, the tie-ins that we learned from Krypton, rest in peace, that show, and the Brainiac legacy that was brought forward in this episode with the inhibitors. I mean, it was just so. I just really, really enjoyed this week's episode.
Yeah, they utilized Crisis to really kick off the second half of their season, right the course, and people who liked the previous season, suddenly you're back in. Yeah. Because suddenly it feels more connected. And I understand because there's a lot of Leviathan talk. Mm. And so I get why the first half of the season went the way it did. Because they needed it. They needed a mystery to put Kara in this place and then to be able to create this need for a Kara-Lex partnership to occur. So I am noticing that Supergirl, although not always consistent, they do play a good game of chess.
They do.
With their characters, they understand the tools that they have, and they're not afraid to bring it out. I mean, heck, geez, we have Alex in a Kryptonian suit.
Yeah.
Right? All over social media. Who says they're not going to suddenly be like, wait, Supergirl's back? Okay, jumping in now. You can get that and Lex Luthor back and everyone and this new world that's being created. So I like that. Like, yeah. This is brilliant, and I get it. It's ironic because it took those 5 hours of TV of my life to get here, but I'm glad we're here, and I'm glad that Supergirl is gonna, fingers crossed, have a really good second half.
Yeah. I think you're right. How they tied everything together, and John Cryer as Lex has just been amazing, and that was one of the standouts from the Crisis, and for me, and also last season. And I'm so glad that they're carrying that forward, the Man of Tomorrow award, and how he is evil. He is great guy Lex to everyone else, but Kara and the rest of the team knows this guy's a snake, and also the how both he and Lena both at their core have the same issue of just not wanting to be alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just a great moment of just character development for both of them, and really explains. I have issues with them belaboring the Kara Lena storyline, but it does bring it forward as far as why the betrayal of them keeping the secret from her for so many years resonates so much, and the angst that she has, and also Lex's need for control and domination. So those were those character moments that I remember from season 4 that I liked, that got me hooked back into the show, and I'm glad they're bringing those forward with the post-Crisis world.
And then they do. And when you're watching an Arrowverse show an Arrowverse episode that really works, the last 2 minutes totally makes you prepared and want to skip forward to next week. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did in this episode, because you have Brainy getting into an alliance with Lex, and then finding out that Wynn is back, kinda, Yeah. Yeah. So I like it. Like, it goes back to what I said about chess. They know who they have available to utilize if they need to call in the player. So I like that. And that's what I've noticed. The episodes that really stuck out to me, besides this one, was also Batwoman, because they did a very similar thing where you're watching an episode and it feels consistent. This episode, although it had that special finesse of being a post-Crisis episode, it still felt very Supergirl, Yeah. It didn't feel like we were watching another version, Arrow, of the show. but it felt like no, this is their reality. Everything that's happening, the decisions that are made, fall in line with the characters we know, and Batwoman too.
Mhm.
And Batwoman, I'm in a few months. I'm going to need an Arrow replacement. Thank God for Kate Kane.
Yeah.
Because this show, it started off slow, it started off predictable, but it keeps so on course right now. And I like it. They even managed to bring Alice and that dynamic, and it didn't feel repetitious for me. I actually liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. Uh, Batwoman, as I messaged you this week, it definitely has it. It feels like, even with still working through their issues with dialogue, but at least theme and storyline wise, they know what they're doing. It's building. It's starting to distinguish itself from the rest of its Arrowverse cousins,
Hmm.
and 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 Ruby really seems to be getting more in tune with Kate as a character. I mean, she really, I don't know if it's better direction that she's getting, or she's just, you know, maybe some of the lessons she learned from Crisis, even though this episode really didn't go as deep as Supergirl did
Right.
with the world changing, other than the moment
Don't
that we'll talk,
say it.
well, yeah,
Say it.
yeah, other than Beth at the end.
Damn it, Will. Think about it. No, you're right. And that's what I liked about this episode, which separates itself from both Arrow and Supergirl this week, is where you got a hint of it at the end. And I think they did that strategically,
Mhm.
because almost there was about halfway through the episode, I was thinking to myself, what? Why is she acting like Crisis didn't happen?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What's going on here? But at the same time, because they left the show on such a high,
Hmm.
such an emotional point of disarray, and a brilliant hour of TV, might I add, it almost was like, no, I'm not going to worry about that, because they're continuing the story they set out to tell prior to all of this Crisis chaos.
Yep.
So I respected that. And then at the end, and the way they utilized it, because you didn't see it coming, and you also and Mary was so integral to pulling that off,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, because the whole time you get her psychological state. That's where we left her to begin with. Her
Hmm.
world hasn't changed.
Exactly.
And everyone's thinking she's crazy, even us to an extent, where we're like, what's going on here?
Yep.
And you don't even think about, well, Crisis just happened. There are multiple brainies. What else could change? And so having Beth come in, especially because there is that important confrontation between Kate and Alice, where
Yeah.
Kate makes it very clear, you are not my sister.
Yep. Yeah. That's was the great setup for that moment at the end of the episode, because without that confrontation there in the school, yeah, then none of that would have worked at the end.
Right, right. And to go to your point about how Ruby has improved, they went so meta with what they were doing in terms of villain of the week,
Hmm.
and there's quotation marks around that, because there really isn't a villain. There is more of a revelation of the week for Kate Kane.
Yep.
I think that's why. I think there's a reason why she's sought after this role, why everyone praised the casting despite what you might think about her acting skills. So there's a lot on her shoulders, and I appreciate how the writers are actually writing in that way.
Yeah.
Or towards that, to really make it kind of balance out.
Hmm. Yeah. It really, and as I mentioned to you, I mean, it really, from when we first started talking about the show, I guess back in October to now, I mean, I just, I've said it before on the podcast and with you, you know, in between shows, how she's feeling more and more comfortable with the character, and maybe it's just me as a viewer. I'm feeling more comfortable with the character.
Good.
And so it's maybe it's just this we're growing together,
Right.
and that's really what you want, I think, as a show to connect with your audience, and I'm finding myself connecting with Kate Kane and by extension Ruby Rose. So to me that is a success that this show has been able to achieve so far, even though they have very bad dialogue at times that does kind of like make it great, but that's the Arrowverse.
Yeah. I mean, we watched Crisis, so
yeah.
Yeah, the details. No, yeah. I really liked it, and you're right. I do agree. Introducing a new character into this universe is very hard because any viewer is constantly comparing you to the ones that they have been with for years now. These shows have been around, and maybe that's why the backdoor pilot for the Canaries show didn't work, or maybe because the Canaries show is just stupid. Okay. I watched it. Well, I really watched it, and you know me, I will skip things.
I know you will.
Right. I do not like wasting my time. I watched the full 43 minutes. Why? First of all, you will not get viewers unless you address the Felicity smoke in the room. Where the heck is she? There was no mention. And it just really bothered me because I'm like, really? She's celebrating her graduation. Her mom isn't there. Like, what does that mean? What's going on here? And it's just, and honestly, and this is something that bothered me a little bit about Supergirl and a lot about Arrow this week. And I don't know your opinion on it. I really don't like this MacGuffin of John Jones. You get your memory back, and you get your memory back, and you get your memory back. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And Cisco is a part of it, and we don't even see that.
Yeah. But I guess, I guess they had to do something for I guess the key characters to, I guess, integrate them back into the story so they can tell, hopefully, continue threads they had before and then build on new ones. But yeah, it is distracting. And basically the explanation, well, everybody's brains will melt if we try to restore everyone. Yeah. Well,
what's the limit? You're putting 15
what's
people,
the limit?
20 people. I don't.
At least with Lena, at least it was a backdoor deal with the monitor that she made that we didn't see off screen. But at least it's that. But
thank you.
Yeah.
It's just that bothered me. Another thing where very short string that they're trying to pull on to make this make sense. So they talk about bad dialogue. So I guess Dinah woke up in 2040 after Oliver's funeral. Whenever that was, because we've seen the production photos.
Right.
And then Laurel is not from 2040, but from 2041.
Yeah. And I have to go back and watch. I thought she was Laurel from present day, and somehow.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I have to go back and watch that again because I thought she was Laurel from present day. That somehow, and apparently, Laurel's story as far as why she was in 2040 apparently gets explained next week during the finale. So hopefully we'll get an explanation for that piece, or if it gets picked up for series, why the timeline worked this particular way for her to get transported to the future. So,
no. This is what leads
yeah.
a lead character on a show for 8 seasons to have a mental breakdown. This kind of, well, it would have made a lot more sense had the finale episode actually been aired as the 9th episode, and then they could have ran off of this
yeah. or just did just a clean backdoor pilot without without finishing out the current storyline with the base show. Yeah, or going straight to series, but assuming it gets picked up. But yeah, I actually liked it.
Will, you're killing me. Like, can you not like something right now? Can you please share in my anger towards something?
Yeah, well, I know. I put the question out to our listeners on our social media, and I know a couple like Aunt Betty Taylor was like hard pass. I know Veronica and Tasha last week were kind of not fans. I know another listener, Sarah Holiday, basically said she is, I guess, reserving judgment, but was concerned to be too much girl power. So, but I mean, I didn't thought. I guess, see, I'm putting myself in your shoes. If they did this with like the Flash, then I'd probably be like where you are right now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Is that I've always had more loyalty to the Flash than you have, arguably. But it just and so yeah, and you do get angry when they do kind of Arrowish loose explanation.
Yeah.
On Flash. So
yeah.
Wait until February, and then you'll be as angry as I am. I'm sure they'll do something stupid.
They'll do something that I will not agree with, and I'll be spitting. I'll be dropping F-bombs like Stephen was on the Michael's podcast. But I think for me, and because I really like Arrow, and I tried to keep an open mind with this to say, okay, let's see how this show does a break from the source, but from the base show. And so I know it was a backdoor pilot. You only have 43 minutes, so they could only do so much exposition as far as getting Mia up to speed into the Green Arrow mode. I actually like the fact that they placed her in a world where she didn't have the memories of what happened in 2019 and 2020.
Right.
And she's basically had come to terms with the fact that her father died a hero, and because of that heroic death, and she had, obviously the shadow of Oliver Queen was over her, but it wasn't like she had this shadow that she had to go out and become a vigilante. They gave
her back her memories.
and then they give her back her memories. But so I think they were trying to show a little difference in her life, and I think they also respected Oliver's memory in the sense that this world and universe that he had created was crime free, and he did have his intact legacy. So those were all sort of structural things that I liked. I mean, and also they, like a good pilot, especially for a person who may have just parachuted in on this series that doesn't have the deep legacy of Arrow like you do. Expanding Dinah's backstory a little bit, and it's just little nice touches where she was just like, clean slate, and yeah, I have all this baggage from before, but you know what? I got a second chance, and what she did with it was, she opened up a bar, and she was just, having a good life until Laurel comes up and screws up everything for everyone again. So
Thank you. She really did. She really screwed up everything for everyone. And I understand what you're saying, and I do agree. I think they set it up a very good way of in this reality. Mia Queen is a socialite.
yeah.
She lost her dad. Apparently, no one cares where Felicity is because there's no mention, so we can only assume that she's alive, I guess. But there was a lot of emphasis on Oliver being dead. So she's very much her dad's daughter, and she's a socialite, and she doesn't really have plans, and she's in this bubble, and the world comes crumbling down because she gets her memories back, memories that are very tragic, which makes me think, I hate predicting the future, but I think I'm pretty spot on here. Just like how 5 years on an island was used.
Yep.
The past will be kind of her purgatory, which, and it's kind of two people now because JJ also, his whole character changed in this reality, and at the end he remembers, and so I think between the two of them, and I do like those decisions, but there's I'm with Stephen on this. I'm done. I'm done with this show. I'm done with Star City. I am here to finish out the show that I started.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you tell me a year from now, Green Arrow and the Canaries is the best Arrowverse show currently airing, I'll jump on. I'll check it out. I'm not gonna start to. I'm not gonna, because I'm kind of at a point where this is unnecessary. It is very unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely make that point that this show Arrow is Arrow 2.0. I mean, because everyone's pretty much there as far as structure. I mean, there's a Green Arrow, there's the Canaries, the Diggles are around as far as JJ and John. So Diggs himself and Lila could easily show up in a guest shot. So it's going to have to. I think they laid the groundwork to be able to use it as a springboard for new stories instead of it being a continuation of the original story. So I think there's enough there for them to do that if it gets picked up the series, and apparently it did very well in the ratings. It was I guess highest non-crossover Arrow show this year.
Well,
this season. So
I was gonna say 2020 just
this season. So that could, the interest was definitely there for sure.
I get it, Will. I get it. I am wrong. You are always right because you're so optimistic, and you're wasting time talking about the Canaries when you could be bringing everyone up to speed on Black Lightning. I don't know what you're doing.
Okay, yeah. Let's get to another show that. Last thing I'll say about it, I'll give it a shot if it gets picked up for series. So Black Lightning, another show that we learned that we actually had both Jefferson and Jennifer in the pocket. Well, Jefferson obviously was with our heroes in the Crisis, but Jennifer somehow ended up in a pocket universe of her own, and then Jefferson comes back and he's so excited to tell Gamby that Superman is real, and which was a pretty dope moment because it was like, it was finally integrating this show into the rest of the Arrowverse, and it did in the first 5 minutes or so, and then they got back to like Batwoman, got back to the story that was being told prior to Crisis, which is still the occupation of Freeland. There were a couple things that I did really like about this episode was that Lynn, I don't like it in the sense that I hate this is happening to Lynn, but Lynn is clearly a green light junkie. to the point where one of the very key scenes in the episode was Jefferson confronting her about the addiction. And I mean, she was like he found like a green light packet. He tossed it down the toilet, and she was like actually reaching into the toilet to get it. And so, yeah. I mean, she's like straight up hardcore addicted to this stuff. That if just to bring folks up, if you haven't watched Black Lightning, so if you remember Agent Odell, he's the ASA liaison in Freeland, and he had been basically feeding this stuff to her to get her addicted to it, because she was just working so hard to like work on the green light kids. So there was a really key moment between Jefferson and Lynn, where he was like, look, you're addicted, and she's like, and you're not, you're addicted to your powers. And he's like, no, this is different. And then of course Henderson calls to like say, hey, we need you like now. And so he had to make a choice to either stay there and try to deal with Lynn, or go and fight with in the resistance with Henderson. So of course he goes, because he didn't want those folks to get hurt. So it was just a really, it was after Jefferson being on this real big high of like, hey, there's a large universe, Superman exists and everything, getting back to the groundedness of Black Lightning and some of the issues that are dealing with in Freeland, I thought was, I thought it was a real good dilemma that he was having to deal with there. So I really enjoyed the episode this week. Jennifer is really showing how she's probably the strongest character as far as powers in the group. I mean, she's like learned how to phase. I mean, it's just really carrying forward the story with the resistance, and how Jefferson and the rest of his family is going to have to basically defeat the ASA. And the other thing with Jennifer is she has had major bloodlust to kill Odell for basically using her over the last few months. But Jefferson and Gamby were like, no, look, he gave you this suit. Don't you think there's like some tech in here to like keep you under control? And so, so they definitely picked up from where they left off pre-Crisis, but acknowledged the crisis and then picked up on the storylines that they have in the series right now. So I really need for you to watch this show, Sarah, because there's a lot of good stuff going on in it that will fill the Arrow void.
I know. It's on my list. You also know that sometimes if I fall off, it's really hard. And I woke up this week, Will. I didn't wake up randomly in 2040, but I woke up to the realization that I actually have to write a huge paper this semester.
I know.
And so this weekend I'm thinking to myself, oh man, I suddenly have something to do, and everything I created such a bad habit, but it is on my list. Thank you for reminding us about this show, and it's part of the Arrowverse, and it is telling great stories. And if you haven't watched it at all, please, seasons 1 and 2 are good. It sets a pace, and it's probably why season 3, from what Will tells us all the time, is really on a very good path. So it's good to know that majority of the shows that returned post-Crisis, they're back.
They're back, yeah.
Despite what I said about Arrow, I'm ready for it to be in. Like, I'm ready for it, but I want to see that finale. I want to see what they do. I want to see how they screw it up, and just closure, So, and more importantly, Flash. I just saw a picture of Diggle, Iris, and Barry.
Yeah.
And that's great.
That's great. Yeah. Well, apparently
we need to wrap the show.
Yeah, we need to wrap the show. But yeah, you're right. I hopefully we'll finally get a final ending to Arrow, because it feels like we've had now 3, 4 endings to all of her stories, but now we'll officially close it out. And like you, I am looking. Hopefully, they stick the landing with ending the series. I think this will be the first time we've had an Arrowverse show actually end. So yeah, hopefully they stick the landing. And I'm looking forward to the Flash returning on February 4th.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us tonight. Will, where can our listeners find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
You can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew at Seated Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.